have a monster game this Sunday afternoon. Everybody knows that by now. Dolphins Bills week 4, just like last year early in the season. It feels like we have a huge game for these two teams. Steve Tasker, all-time great Buffalo Bill, WGR 550 up in Buffalo, joining us here. Appreciate your time again here, Steve, joining us. And I feel like, back when you were playing for the Bills and I was a teenager back then watching Marino and Kelly, whenever the Dolphins and Bills got together, that was a major, major deal. And it kind of feels like we're back in that place. Now, mainly it's been the Dolphins' fault. The Bills have been good for a little while now. And now with the Dolphins back, it's seemingly on that level. It feels like old times where these are the huge games of the season, right?
Yeah, it does. And I think the thing that adds to it is the fact that they've been division rivals for so long. And for a long time, there were no meaningful games between them. Now you've had playoff games. Now you've got these two teams vying, particularly with what's going on with the Jets this season. You've got these two teams vying for the division title. And with the Dolphins playing the way they are this early point in the season, you're starting to think about playoff seeding, getting that bye week at the time. So this is exactly the situation we used to be in with Dan Marino and Jim Kelly and Bruce Smith and all those guys that, you're Don Shula and Marv Levy. I mean, two iconic coaches. Yeah, it's the meaning of the game and what happens with the game that makes this so big. There's a lot going on here, a lot at stake, and you feel like this game's going to carry some weight when the season's said and done.
Did you hate the Dolphins when you played?
I tried to. It was easy early on, and then I played in the early '90s. I played in the Pro Bowl, and Don Shula and the staff were the coaching staff. And then he's
and you liked them.
Turned out he was a great dude, right? And then so that kind of made it hard to dredge up the animosity that I'd always had been so easy to do. I kind of like the guy then. I still do. God rest his soul. His son Mike's in the building here in Buffalo, so I know him. Great dude too. So. Yeah, it used to be. It was very easy to dredge up some animosity, and then it got a little more difficult too. Jim Kelly and Dan Marino, they were good buddies. Dan would come up here in Buffalo and play in Jim's golf tournament every year, and Dan is a friend of mine as well. But we worked together at CBS for a lot of years and spent some time together. He's a good dude. So yeah, back in the day when it first started. I had as much animosity toward the Dolphins as any Bills fan. But as you play those guys and learn to respect them as players and coaches, and then get a chance to know them off the field, that became difficult.
Fans love that stuff. I mean, an all-time great memory for me as a kid is Brian Cox and the middle fingers. Like, whoa, he hates the Bills just as much as I do. Like, that's endearing to fans. And I don't feel I'm just guessing. I don't think anyone in the Bills locker room hates the Dolphins right now. And I don't know that anyone in the Dolphins locker room, except maybe Christian Wilkins and Josh Allen. Otherwise, I don't think any Dolphin hates the Bills,
Yeah, well, they don't have that baggage to carry around, like so many guys did back in the old days. I came in '86. There were still guys that were part of the team early in their careers that remember for the '70s, fans, certainly there's still a generation of fans who remember that. There's still a generation of fans who remember Brian Cox, and who, by the way, I have a relationship with him. He's a good dude. I know Brian as well. And I tell Brian this all the time. Players and coaches kind of think like this, but even back when Brian was the arch enemy of Bills fans, we'd watch films of those Miami teams getting ready to play, and we'd watch their defense. We'd watch them play. We'd watch them play the teams that, in the scouting department, we'd scout them. So you'd see the Dolphins defense play all these other teams. And for us on our offense, I tell Brian Cox this to his face. I've told him this a number of times. I said, he was the guy on the Dolphins team, even aside from Dan on the other side of the ball. Brian was the guy on the Dolphins team that we wish we had on ours. He's the only one. He was that kind of player who was absolutely had zero give up, who was gritty, would do anything to win the game, would be selfish or unselfish. He would sacrifice his body and everything. He played the game in a way that was admirable, even to his opponents. And despite what the fans thought of him, there's a lot of love and respect for Brian Cox and the way he played in our locker room. So, yeah, none of the players on these squads, it's a division rivalry. It's a big game. It's an important game. But it's hard to make it personal in this day and age. And I think that's one of the things that is different about it.
Yeah. It's an early season game. It's only week 4, but it feels like a huge game, especially because, Buffalo, if Buffalo loses, that's 2 divisional losses, and it'd be 2 games back of Miami in the early part of the season, with week 18 being in Miami to close the season. Do you think does one team need this game more than the other does?
Well, strictly numbers speaking, it's more important for the Bills. They don't want to drop 2 games behind Miami at this early stage of the season with Miami playing the way they are. You would really be hard-pressed to think you're going to gain 2 games on these guys over the course of the season. You could do it on Sunday. Now, they could switch places with them in the standings. They'd both be 3-1, and the Bills would have the tiebreaker. So it is a big game for Buffalo. Miami probably statistically and with wins law, it probably doesn't need it as bad as Buffalo does. But certainly it gives Miami's margin of error a huge boost if they go 2 games up on Buffalo at this point of the season.
When you're keeping track of the Dolphins and Broncos last week and you see the score keeps climbing and climbing and climbing, and the Dolphins score 70 and they win by 50, what were your thoughts?
Well, first of all, you knew Miami could score some points on teams. When you score 70 on a team in the NFL, it's not just about the Dolphins and their team speed and how good they're playing offense. It's about the Broncos as well. I think the Broncos checked out of that game early, and they got pummeled for it. They're certainly in a rebuilding phase, no question about it. And certainly you're going to have bad games when you're going through the phase with a new head coach and the kind of things that they've got going on with their roster and their team build. But that's what happens when a game like that happens. One of the teams, the Broncos had as much to do with it as the Miami Dolphins did. You can't take anything away from the Dolphins, but the Broncos certainly probably have some soul searching to do.
Yeah, like the way that I said the other day, no team is 50 points better than another team. Right. Like something really bad happened on Sunday, or something really great also happened, for that to wind up happening on Sunday.
Yeah, that's right. The Broncos, they only scored 13 points in the game offensively. Gave up a kick return late, did the Dolphins, but that, and you've seen the pictures where there's like 6 or 7 Broncos guys on the ground with the guy running past them. Yeah, it's just not a good look. And I think the Broncos were ready for that game to be over well before it was actually over.
I thought this was a great win for Buffalo this weekend. I mean, obviously they blew them out, but it's on the road. It's a Washington team that definitely felt real good about themselves going into the game, and Buffalo crushed them. The difference between losing week 1 in New York and maybe the way the fan base felt compared to how they're feeling right now about the Bills is what?
Well, I think people know that even in week 1, the Bills really were as big of an opponent as the Jets were to themselves. The Bills, and that's the way it's been under Sean McDermott. It's been a very good football team for a handful of years now. They've been contenders. They've been division champs 3 years in a row. They've been in the playoffs 4 or 5 years in a row. They're a good football team, and I've made the case that they've been good enough to go to and win a Super Bowl for a number of years now. But you got to play well on the day that your season's on the line. They haven't been able to do that. I think the thing about this Bills team is that if you're going to beat them, they're going to have to help you, or you're going to have to make them help you. They're too good on offense, too good on defense, that if they don't give you any help, they're really too tough to beat. But they have a propensity to do that. They turn the ball over. And when you do that, you do give teams a chance, teams who can't play with you a chance to play with you, and good teams a chance to beat you. And that's where the Bills are right now. The Dolphins are a team good enough to beat them, but the Bills are going to be right there at the end of it, even against good teams. So I have every reason to believe this is going to be a game that comes down to the wire, much like that the game did last year with Tua up here in Buffalo, where the Bills won it with a field goal late. I think that's what this kind of game is going to be. I don't anticipate this getting out of hand on one side or the other. But if the Bills play their game and mistake free, and I'm sure the Dolphins feel this way as well, if they play their game and don't make mistakes, it's going to be their game. And I think that's where these two teams are right now.
Steve, we all know Josh Allen's great. Give me some thoughts on Tua and what you've seen and just his growth and where he's at.
Right now, so we've had fun, having our way with Tua up here, and saying that the Dolphins' plan in the offseason was to give Tua a new helmet and teach him how to take a butt whooping. I mean, that was their plan, and and that's really it. We treated people outside of Miami have treated Tua a little differently than we treated any other player in the league. We've held his injury history against him. Mm-hmm. If you don't do that, he's a really good quarterback, and they've built this team around his ability to get rid of the ball and do it accurately. They've given him some weapons that are stellar and that he can exploit. Mike McDaniel has given them a kind of innovative offensive scheme with the quick motion and the speed, using the speed and out leveraging a team at the snap in order to get big plays. So they're an elite football team. Tua is playing at an elite level. We've seen him do it for a stretch last year before the injuries hit. And now they've taken right up and done that. So whenever Tua's on the field, this team's got to feel like it's an elite offense. And you got to give him the credit for making them feel that way.
Finally here, Steve, as a former pro yourself, I'm wondering what your thoughts were with the Dolphins kneeling the ball on fourth down. A lot of fans wanted them, obviously, to kick the field goal, go for 73 points. Are you of the mindset where, hey, a record's there, let's go for a record, or do you like the way the Dolphins handled it?
Yeah, from the outside in, I like the way they handled it. You can make a case either way. Back in the day when Bill Belichick had Randy Moss and Tom Brady, and they were ringing people up, and they went 19 wins in a row. Mm-hmm. They got there on a lot of weeks running it up on people. They were still throwing the ball deep late in games when they were up by multiple scores. They were crushing teams. And I thought that was a pretty effective way to go through the season. You didn't want to show any let up at all. And so you can make the case that, yes, karma, when Mike McDaniel mentioned karma, I get it with not doing it. But I also think that it says something about your team when you don't care. You're going to run it up on people and you're going to go. And that it kind of throws a gauntlet down in your own locker room about your preparation and about how you get ready mentally for games and about how you feel. Forget about the opponent. We're going out there and we've got our foot on the gas all the time. And that bleeds over into your defense as well. They're going to have that attitude. So I don't know that Mike McDaniel did his team any favors by not kicking the field goal, but by making a statement. Certainly putting Mike White in makes a statement enough about listen. And I agree with that. Let them throw it. Run your offense. If you're still scoring with your backup players in, as many backups as you're allowed to put in the NFL because the roster is so small, let them play. And I do agree with that. But going out and taking a knee at the end, I liked it. But in the big picture, you wonder how it's going to play, because those games don't come along very often. And I get it. And playing hard till the very end also makes you vulnerable to the very end. A twisted ankle, a popped knee, shoulder in whatever. Mm-hmm. It leaves you open to the risk that every play gives in the NFL. I liked it. I thought it was a good move by him. With karma and all of that, I thought we were right on point for him. But I also know that when you go out and you're playing hard, it says something about your team and to your players if you're going hard to the very end and coaching hard to the very end. So I think it remains to be seen what that meant.
It's going to be a lot of fun this weekend. And apparently from what I saw, the weather's going to be nice. Yes?
Yes, it should be absolutely spectacular. Low 70s. Yeah, it's going to be great.
Very
it's going to be a
good.
great game.
Very good. Thank you for joining us again here, Steve. I appreciate it. Enjoy the game this weekend.
My pleasure, John. Talk to you later.